Making my mojo. And there he is. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am okay.
Glad to hear.
I'm
Glad to
okay.
hear.
Making.
As okay as we can be during these times.
Pardon?
We're okay as we can be during these times. So.
Yes, for sure. Hey, thanks everybody for joining in. Going to talk a lot about different things. At the academy right now, nice and empty and cold. And I'm trying to make myself a cup of coffee. All right. Let's just wait a few minutes to see, we're actually early, so we'll give it a few minutes to see if we can get a bunch of people to join us here this morning. And then we'll get started. Is that cool?
Nicholas,
Take your time.
Should give me a shout out to my sweet gloves. Thank you very much. Original Beatdown Sports.
All right, what do we got here? We don't even
I gotta tell you, Professor, I'm going crazy. I can't train. I'm going nuts, man.
Well, you guys do the best that you can at home, man. Like that's that's what everybody else is doing, or at least they're pretending to be doing.
There's only so many Instagram push-ups I can do. So many.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I'm not gonna lie here. Like, I haven't been really focused too much on that aspect as far as like workouts or anything like that. I have a bad shoulder right now that's bugging me, so it kind of limits me to what I can do. But I'm trying to keep the academy going, right? So I've been focusing a lot on that. How to make sure we survive this and come back. And of course, my family's at home, so I have to spend some time with them. It's been challenging because I spend hours and hours and hours online trying to figure things out and make things work. I definitely want to have an academy to come back to. So there's a lot to process and a lot to work out. At first, I was a little hesitant, but I am trying my best to see if I can provide like more online content and possibly like some online classes as well. But that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to figure out a lot of things and get to know the platform and and all this other stuff. So it takes a few days to manage all these things. So definitely, taking steps towards, maintaining some type of sanity. And for me, sanity means busy. I have to keep myself busy. I'm not too much of the type to just lounge around and do nothing. I like to stay busy working on something. So, yeah, it is what it is.
It's interesting. It just seems like there's a big push towards it's funny how the virus has kind of pushed everyone to go towards streaming services, whether they like it or not, right? Even though we have a very physical sport, so to speak. So yeah, it's an interesting industry push, is what I'm trying to note here. So
no, definitely, I think we've been. It's funny because it's been said a lot lately. It's only been like 2.5 weeks, and adapt or die, right? So I don't go down easy, man. So I'm trying to adapt. I'm trying to adjust. I do come from an older generation, so it might be a little bit more challenging. Mm-hmm. With all this techie stuff. I just want to get on the mats, teach and do my thing. But, we have members and we have students and an academy to worry about it. So there's definitely some adjustments here. We have to adapt or die. Right? So I'm trying to adapt. I'm trying my best to adapt here. We started with some online kids classes. We're starting today. Today is going to be the first class with Josh.
Okay.
And then Romano will be doing Mondays and Fridays.
How are they? How do the kids tune in?
Zoom.
Is it through Instagram as well? Oh, Zoom.
Yeah, Zoom. Yeah, Zoom. Zoom is a good platform. I think everybody is in the industry is using Zoom right now. Like everyone, and we're talking like hundreds of martial arts academies are going towards using Zoom. It works. I think it's a good platform. They have a free version, which is not bad, and then they have a pro version, which is facilitates a lot more, and it's great. It's a good platform. I think there's a lot of people, using that right now. Martial arts schools using it. It's a conference platform. You can see everybody at the same time. Everyone can talk and see each other. It's really, really good. It's a good platform. My next step is trying to figure out if there's enough interest to do adult classes, right? So,
Mhm. Mhm, mhm.
all right, what's it say
Um,
here? Kind of,
jiu-jitsu.
no,
Sorry.
I'm just gonna try and see some of the comments here so we don't miss a whole lot of what people are saying.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yes, argue.
Can't argue with that. Argue, man. Never give up.
Argue as much as possible.
Yeah.
Um, you know what? Let's take a shift away from COVID-19 and what it's done to various industries, and let's
Mm-hmm.
move on to
Hey, Kate.
oh, pardon me?
No, I'm just saying hi to people that are coming in on
Oh,
board
fair
here.
enough. I want to move on to, I guess, our discussion question of the week, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, I'm really curious. You mentioned about how you mentioned your generation not too long ago. What do you find the biggest difference between your generation and the older generation is
In terms of BJJ, of course, right?
in terms of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, mixed martial arts? We don't have to necessarily just stick to BJJ, but like, what do you see? What do you see the differences in mentality, the ways you train? What's changed?
Um, I think the you know there's definitely the reason why people start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Let's just stick with that for now. Like, and I think BJJ MMA is kind of um, I'll get into that in a second. But the reason why we got in, why I got into BJJ is completely different than what the new generation gets into BJJ, right? I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I wanted to fight MMA. It was in the early days of the UFC. Royce Gracie and the Gracie family introduced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu to the world. So all of us that got into Jiu-Jitsu at the time was because we wanted to do MMA. We wanted to fight, whether in a ring or a cage. We wanted to be professional fighters. That's why I got into it. That was the attraction. That was the appeal, right? And I had a martial arts background, and I hope some of these people who have been following my Facebook posts on my history of martial arts, and there's more coming.
So you
You know, I
Taekwondo,
had
Muay Thai?
I had martial arts experience prior to 1993, November 12th. Never gonna forget that date. UFC one. Just kind of opened my eyes. Like, wow, I wanted to do what that little Brazilian guy is doing, but obviously there was no BJJ at the time. But anyway, so yeah, we got into it to do MMA. So MMA was the priority, right? And then self-defense, because we wanted to be able to mess people up on the streets if they messed with us, right? So we wanted to be able to defend ourselves on the street. So self-defense was number two, and the sport, gi and no gi sport, was number three. It wasn't our main focus, right? It was something to keep us busy. Like, we had tournaments, it kept us active, but the majority of us we were training or trying to train to get fights and fight professionally in MMA. But that, I think, that the kind of, if I want to, just to keep it short, or to kind of make it easier for people to understand, as the popularity of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grew and academies started to grow, then it started to slowly shift towards, like, hey, people didn't want to fight MMA. People just loved the BJJ, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu aspect of it. So because of that transition, schools started to grow. So the sport and tournaments started to grow, right? So there was a progression from, okay, only MMA guys, because in my time, there was like 20 guys on the mat, and they were all fighters. It wasn't like today where you have commercial schools and 50, 60 people on the mat doing just doing BJJ, have no interest in MMA.
And striking.
So it was like 20 tough guys beating each other up every night, trying to prepare for fights. And we had a lot of success, you know, but our team, the team that I was a part of, had a lot of success. We had a lot of champions, and we won a lot of titles. So that's what we were focused on. But again, the sport started to grow. Then we started to get members that just wanted to do the sport. So we started to have more jiu-jitsu classes and gi classes, no gi classes. It was kind of, everybody was kind of started to kind of like, okay, we just want to do this. And that was fine. And then slowly, more tournaments. But the first few years in Canada, there was like 1 or 2 tournaments a year. That's it. So that alone is a huge difference between then and now, right? 2 tournaments a year to 2 tournaments a month, right?
Is that tournament still running?
No, those tournaments are no longer running. No
kidding.
Those tournaments are no longer running. So you go from 2 tournaments a year, maybe 3, to like 2 tournaments every month in some instances, right? With the OJA. Just with the OJA alone, that's not like all the other tournaments that are going on. Yeah, all this other stuff, right? Exactly. So what really pushed the sport to the forefront was when the International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation moved the World Championships to California in the early 2000s. I don't remember the exact year, right? But in the early 2000s, the IBJJF moved the World Championships to California. So it became way more accessible to the world, right? It became, easier. And because, there's been a close relationship between U.S. and Brazil because of the UFC and most of the, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts migrating to the U.S., it's where the sport was growing the fastest, right? So I think that's what really pushed the sport to the forefront. And then, it became more accessible for the world to go to a championship where, going to Brazil, there's a lot of factors there that made it difficult for a lot of people, right? You need visas, and, people are, a little bit concerned about the safety of being in Brazil, right? Brazil has had some troubled years sometimes, like with violence and things like that. So it just, for a lot of the logistical problems, it made sense to move to the U.S. And of course, IBJ. I mean, I know I have a love-hate relationship with the IBJJF. I think they've done a lot for the sport, and a sport that I'm very passionate about. But there's also the biggest thing that really irks me is that we have to be reminded all the time that it's a for-profit organization. Right? So going to the U.S., charging U.S. dollars, it really, gave them a stronger footing to grow faster, right? So, and I think that had a lot to do with it as well. So that's, again, once that happened in the early 2000s, then you see this huge shift where, people are just wanting to train jiu-jitsu for the sport of jiu-jitsu. There was no longer any interest in MMA, right? So it's turned upside down. And I've talked about this many times before. Like jiu-jitsu, from when we started till now, it's kind of turned upside down. So now here's what it is. Gi and no gi is number 1. Some may have some interest in self-defense, and an occasional young talented kid wants to do MMA. So you see, it's the reverse now, right? When we first started, MMA, self-defense, sport. Now it's sport, self-defense, MMA, right? As far as like priority for people, right? Yeah. And so I think that's the biggest difference in my mind between the older generation and the new generation, right? The older generation, I don't know if this is an accurate assessment, but they were tough guys, you know, technical but tough, gritty because of the MMA, right?
Mhm.
Um, you know, it only brought out the guys who can handle a lot of pressure, you know. Um,
Can't really afford to make
and
mistakes.
you
So
know,
that's like fun.
it was a fundamental game, but a very solid fundamental game. You know what I mean? Like, so the close guard was you know again, all that MMA influence made the close guard more of a priority, you know, and things like that. And so the way you play the game was a little bit different. Keeping in mind also that everything was allowed, you know,
Mhm.
heel hooks, knee bars, all belts, all ranges. You know, we had when tournaments in the early days with the tournaments, and I'll be posting some stuff later on about my BJJ career. There was no belts. It was beginner and advanced.
What was the cutoff?
3 years.
Oh, man.
Yeah, 3 years.
Okay, that's insane.
So, pardon?
That's insane. Like,
Yeah, three
that's
years. That was the difference. You know, 3 years and under, 3 years and over. So it's beginner and advanced. And I never participated in the beginner. I went straight to the advanced. I guess I was young and foolish and thought I could do it.
well, why punch down, right? So,
I had some success, and again, I'll go into that. You guys follow along with my ride in the BJ, you know, and with my martial arts journey. You know, try to follow along with that. And you'll, you know, I'll talk about a little bit more about it. It's hard to condense, you know. My math's not great, but I started at 17. I'm now 45. It's hard to condense everything down. It's hard to remember everything, you know. So I'm keeping like my posts kind of short, kind of small, right? And just kind of a short overview. It's
mhm.
not like an extensive, you know, biography of every single little thing that I did. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, you know, the things that I did and accomplished in a short kind of snippet.
Mhm. Oh, yeah,
Um,
fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm not, you know, going posting every single picture, every single video I have. Like it's a lot of content. I'm not doing that. Just kind of short, you know.
You're seeing that for the documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I'll give her a
Yeah.
call after we're done here. Hopefully she'll
Um,
realize that no, my wife will let her know we're busy.
you touched on something. I want to roll back into that for a second.
Finish
You
here.
mentioned, say it again.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
go ahead.
You mentioned about how like there was like a toughness to like your generation,
Well,
and like
let me
I
finish.
just apologize, Marco. You're cutting out just my hair.
Yeah, I know. It's, my daughter keeps trying to call me, and every time she calls me, you know, it goes, "Hey."
Who's that? Oh, it's
Right.
Ram. Hey, how you doing, Ram? It's good to see you, man.
So yeah, no. Let me just kind of finish, and then you can ask your questions. And that's
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
you know, as far as the difference goes. So they might be a little bit more gritty and stuff like that, but the kids today, what they are capable of doing, the evolution of the sport, the innovations, the creativity of the sport, it's been amazing. You know, like what they can do today versus what we can do back then is night and day. You know, and I
Mhm.
know that some people, some ruffles, some feathers get ruffled every time we talk about this, but you know, a purple belt today, a world level purple belt today, would mangle every single one of us back then. It's just, but it's not because of the skill. It's because the amount of time that they are able to focus on just the one thing, right? We were practicing, striking, wrestling, judo. We were practicing for MMA, so we weren't like just BJJ and that was it. Now that's all they're doing, and there's a certain level of professionalism to it now. You know what I mean? There's a certain level of professionalism. They spend more hours. They have better training, dieting, um, strength and conditioning. It's become like almost like a professional sport, right? And they're way better skill wise. You know, the, maybe not skill, but like they have more tools at their disposal to make them more efficient to what they're doing. So we may be tough. We may be able to kind of hang in there if we were doing like a match comparison. But I think the kids today, man, like different level, different level. Us as professors from the old generation, our job is not to prove anything, right? Our job is to stay connected, to keep learning, keep evolving with the sport as coaches. That's our job. It's not to prove whether we're better or if the kids are better or if we're better. No, this is a silly conversation. It's different times, different circumstances. All right, you go ahead, ask your question. You lost it?
I'm curious. What do you think? Do you think there's any like? How do I? Well, I don't even know where to start. You've opened a whole can of worms here. It's like, this is great. Here, let's go to the first thing that comes to mind. Like, there's a lot to touch on. Tournaments have, like you mentioned, one big factor right there already was no. There's like two divisions. That's a huge difference. What's changed? Like, what else? What big differences
Weight
are there?
classes. Just there were still weight classes, just only beginner and advanced though.
Right, right. Did you see was there still a division between Nogi and Gi, or or was it how do I say?
No, yeah, there was gi and no gi.
Okay.
Yeah, there
So
was.
otherwise, the tournament actually the tournament structure hasn't changed much, but it's like it was short of like that one big difference of no what's it called no experience of it, like no differentiation experience.
Hmm. Sorry, say that again. Ask the question again, please.
I guess tournaments haven't actually changed that much aside from the
Definitely
experience
have.
division. Oh, they definitely
Definitely
have.
have.
How
Yeah.
so?
Well, like rules, like everything allowed back then in the advanced division, neck
Neck
crank,
crank, toe hooks.
slamming, heel hooks,
Oh,
everything was allowed. Where now, but this is the thing, like again, the evolution of the sport. A lot of people got hurt, in those early tournaments. People not only got hurt, but they were never able to go back to the sport again. Knees, knee damage. Keep in mind that whole MMA vibe where, a lot of us were just focusing on that. So there was a lot of injuries. I can speak for myself. Like, I have neck problems. I've had neck problems for a long time, and it was mainly because of the MMA training. And again, neck cranks was allowed, and slamming was allowed, and so a lot of people got heel hooked and then got their knees mangled and never came back. So that's why the sport evolved with more rules, more safety. If you want to grow to mainstream, you got to have safety. It can't be a free for all. So there's got to be a difference between what we do as a gi sport versus what those guys do in the cage. And safety was the main thing. Okay, you can't allow this, you can't allow that, because it was cutting a lot of people's careers short, right? So it's that you want guys to have long careers in jiu-jitsu, especially at the black belt level. So they took away some of the things that would that cause the biggest injuries, the injuries that take you a long time from the sport, the injuries that take a long time to recover or that are career ending. So they took away heel hooks because people's knees are, can be severely damaged with those. And people took away like no more slamming inside the guard. So I can't pick you up in the guard and slam you. So they took that away. Again, because of neck injuries, a lot of people were getting, injuries. There's certain things you can't allow. Like there's no spiking. So I can't dump you on the top of your head.
That blows my mind that that was allowed in the first place.
So it was this. It evolved to have a lot more safety, and I agree with it. It's an amateur sport. I'm not getting paid any money. I'm actually paying the promoter money to compete. I think there should the more safety it has, the better. If you want to prove, listen, here's the thing. You want to prove that you're a tough guy, go train MMA. Don't try to be a tough guy in jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Don't try to prove that you want to be a tough guy. Oh, allow everything. No, man. No, it's not smart.
There's a separate sport.
No, there's a difference now between these professional events that are coming up, where they're paying the grapplers money. Okay, then you can allow heel hooks. Why? Because I'm getting paid. You know, but even look at the history of EBI. If you look at the Eddie Bravo's Invitational, which is no longer in existence, I don't know, as far as like they completely went with combat jiu-jitsu now.
Right.
If you look at all the events, go look at all the events. How many of those guys limped off because they got heel hooked?
A lot.
They didn't walk away, they limped away. It's an extremely damaging move, right? But it's a professional show. They're getting paid. It gives them a chance to be more marketable, to make more money with seminars and things like that. So for black belt level shows, professional shows, okay, allow what you got to allow, because that's okay. But amateur tournaments, we have to go 1, 2, 3, sometimes 7 matches in one day. You have to make it as safe as possible. You have to.
I guess that culture is also reflected in training too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that culture also reflected in your academy and like just the mainstream culture right now versus before, where if everything was allowed, everyone was training like that too?
I think that I don't understand. I think that there's always this idea of want versus need. You know, everybody wants to do everything. You know, nobody wants. There's a culture of nobody wants to be left out, right? And you know, I think novices and intermediate level guys need to learn a little bit more patience. And like, guys, you're gonna be allowed to do everything eventually, but go through the stages, right? Okay, white belts are not allowed to do this, this, and this. It's for their own safety, right? They don't have enough body control, understanding. They're gonna get hurt if they're gonna allow certain things. Why? Because white belts have a tendency to argue more, right? As far as like, they don't understand the position, so I'm gonna argue, and they get hurt. There's definitely needs to be some, you know, some levels to grow into. And again, it goes back to longevity in the sport. That's the idea behind the rules and the safety, is longevity in the sport. So we want to keep you in the sport and training as long and as safely as you can. That's why there's, okay, you can only allowed to do this belt, and this belt, and so on and so on. At black belt, okay, allowed everything except for heel hooks and slamming. Why? Knee injuries, neck injuries, we want to avoid those, right? So, yeah, the people just need to understand want versus need. We're giving you what you need, which is safety, longevity in the sport. What everybody wants is to be allowed to do everything.
That's
You know what I mean? So, in my academy is want versus need. I'm telling what you need. I'm not going to give you what you want, right? You need to learn some patience. You need to learn some patience, and eventually you will be able to do everything if you stick long enough with the sport. And that's the idea, right? Or the art is for you to get to black belt. That should be everybody's goal, right? That should be an incentive, a motivation. It's like, man, I got to keep training, because once I get to black belt, I'm going to be able to do everything that I want to do. That doesn't mean I don't teach it. I teach it. I teach everyone the moves. My guys that teach the no-gi classes teach all the techniques. So my instructors teach everything, but you as an athlete have the responsibility to know the rules and play by them. If you don't like the rules, don't play, or go look for an organization that allows those rules. But I highly, you know, recommend my guys to, hey, be patient, play by the rules. And the thing is, because here's the thing. The interesting about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that you can get really, really good at one thing and just mangle everybody with it. And heel hooks is one of those things. right? If I just train you in heel hooks, you can beat everybody up and damage everyone. Fair. Is it an option? Yes, it is. It's an option. But you're going to have no tournaments to compete in, no events. Nobody's going to take you because you haven't built yourself any reputation where you can. So what's the point, right? Unless you want to go, okay, go into MMA then, right? You see what I'm saying? Like, so why not make yourself as well-rounded as possible? So as a beginner, okay, you have a certain skill set, a certain amount of tools that you should be getting good at, right? Arm bars, arm locks and chokes, gi chokes, arm locks and gi chokes, and your basic Achilles foot lock. Remember, as a white belt, you're allowed to do that. So you have your arm locks, your basic arm locks, your basic chokes, and your straight Achilles. Okay, then you move on to the next stage. Okay, now you're allowed to do wrist locks, right? You know what I mean? So now you have another tool that you can play with, and you can start getting better at controlling people's backs and submitting from the back, right? Okay, then you go to brown and black. Now you have your knee bars and your toe holds, right? So you at each stage you can improve certain weapons, right? And you really should be good at all of the basic attacks. A basic arm lock, kimura, rear naked choke, any type of Americana, right? Lapel chokes from the front, from the back, wrist locks, basic foot locks. Okay, then you move on to advanced foot locks. So there's a progression there where you can specialize afterwards. There's nothing wrong with specializing. But in my opinion, as a white and blue belt, you should make yourself as well-rounded as possible and have a good foundation. Submissions, escapes, basic guard play, and passing the guard.
Right? You probably have more fun with it too.
And of course, let's not forget. Okay, once you hit the ground, there's 4 areas. Taking away the takedown aspect, right? There's 4 areas. It's simple: escapes, guard passes, guard play, and dominant positions, right? That's it. So you should have a base, a fundamental base on those 4 areas before moving on to specializing, whether it's in a particular guard that you're really, really good at. And everybody should be specialized on a guard in one or 2 guards. You're not going to be good at every single guard. It's impossible. But you can be really, really good in 1 or 2, So eventually you figure out what that is. Everybody is going to gravitate. My job is to give you options, and then your job is to find out the one that you like best and specialize. I think you should only, that I'm not saying you can't specialize early on. You can. You can specialize as early as white belt. I can teach a white belt to beating bolo everybody. You know what I mean? But I don't think that's smart. I don't think that's intelligent on my part. My job is to. Pardon?
Does that hurt them in the long term?
Long term. Because once someone figures you out, then you're done. Once someone figures out that's all you do, then they pass your guard. The problem with specializing in a guard as a novice is that once someone passes your guard, you're toast. Yeah. Right. It takes a long time to get good at escapes. Even as black belts, you know what I'm saying? So it takes a long time to get good at escapes. It really does. Mm-hmm. So I think if you specialize in the guard as white blue, someone passes your guard, you're done. Your game is over. So I think you should focus on good close guard. Why? Defensive guard, smart. Don't get your guard passed. Basic attacks, basic sweeps. On that level, when you go to tournaments, you're going to have more success as a white belt, as a beginner. Beginner versus beginner. Remember, it's jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu. Right? Okay, again, Yes, I can make someone specialize and be successful in tournaments, but I'm not doing them a good service overall in their whole jiu-jitsu journey, right? My job is to make you have a really solid foundation and then specialize afterwards. You know what I mean? And I think that's the smarter, more intelligent way to do it. Again, there's no right and wrong. If you want to I can take every single, like 10 kids now, take them in and just go strictly advanced sport. And they're going to kill everybody in tournaments, you know? But is that the right thing to do though? Because I don't think it's good for the art. I don't think it's good for the martial art. Yeah, it's good for the sport, but not good for the art. Because in the long run, if they have success, they have to move on to the next belt, right? If they have continue to have success, they move on to the next belt. And all of a sudden, this is a black belt who wants to open an academy, and they only specialize in a few things. So what about the rest of the art? You know what I mean? Like, do they have, and now they have to relearn the whole fundamentals, the whole self-defense. They got to relearn all of that, and in order to have a successful overall school. Why? Because competition is only 3 to 5% of most school student base. All right. So, like, I think it's a juggling act to try and find balance. But I think the tiers is the best way to do it, right? Fundamental, novice, intermediate, competition class. And you have to progress through each one. Again, long-term success versus short-term success, right? I want long-term success, and I think this is the smarter, more intelligent way to do it, is to have these tiers. Novice program, intermediate, guys who just want to have fun and roll and enjoy the sport, compete occasionally here and there on the local scene, versus competition class, super hard, super difficult, super intense, and only modern game, right? And I think this is the way more intelligent way to do it. Mm-hmm. This is going to be Michael, this is going to be a silly question, but how do we post this on Facebook afterwards? You know how to do that?
Oh yeah, it saves to your phone automatically. You should re-upload the video right after.
Oh, okay, cool. Because I want to make sure that we this was kind of short notice, and let's use it to kind of promote the next one. So I was curious about that.
We got topics for days, so this will save. It'll be good. It'll be good. I'm glad you ended that on the competition class.
Mr. Santos, how are you? I hope he's still watching.
What's it called? So you have your competition class that you have, which I've been part of. I've been very lucky to train in that room. And then there's also, I'm assuming, what you and your original crew back when you were training and competing, you had your competition class. What's the big difference from that class and your class now? Because yours is very structured, it's very detailed. You do a lot of deliberate things. There's always a lesson plan. You see, I feel like you learned a few things from before and you implemented a completely new structure.
Well, like I said, like when I transitioned to a full-time coach, mm-hmm. The truth is, like, it was back in the day, everybody was kind of the same, right? You do a warm-up, you learn 2 or 3 techniques, and you roll, right? That was the fundamental structure. That was it. Warm-up, your typical line drills, 1 or 2 things, maybe 3 techniques, maybe, and then roll. It was a lot of rolling. But, yeah, and you can evolve and get really, really good, but it's a longer process, I think. It's a lot of self-discovery when you're doing a lot of rolling. Like, you figure a lot of things out on your own, but it takes time. It takes a lot of time, I think, in my mind. But that was that's what we knew. That's what we were taught. That's what we understood. Okay, warm up, 2, 3 things, roll. And we did that for many, 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 many years. Up until
was it just jiu-jitsu, or was this like strikes and MMA involved?
No, this is jiu-jitsu. I'm just referring to the jiu-jitsu class, right? Because the MMA class was separate.
Got you.
We had an MMA class from 7 to 8:30. And then when we were, that's the other thing. Like we trained for like 4 hours on average, because it was like an hour and a half of MMA, and then we would put the gi on and then do jiu-jitsu for an hour and a half, right? So it was a lot of training. But again, we were splitting the focus, and the main focus, like the jiu-jitsu was like a cool down almost in a way. It was just an additive, like the focus was the MMA, and then we did, the jiu-jitsu afterwards, just to, because we enjoyed rolling around in our gis. Come on, let's not kid ourselves. It's fun. So that was the way it was back then. And it was like that for a very long time. And even a lot of academies today still follow that format. Warm up, 2-3 techniques, and then roll, What changed for me is when I've started teaching as early as blue belt, because there was no black belts. Our professor would come every 6 months, spend either a week or two, sometimes a month, depending on the arrangement, and you need to go back to Brazil, and we were kind of left to our own thing. So the Shaw Franco, the main guy who ran the place, he did most of the teaching, but whenever he couldn't, then it would fall on me, because I was kind of like the senior member. So I've been literally teaching classes since blue belt. So it's not like I didn't become the person that I am or the instructor that I am overnight. I've been teaching since blue belt, So if I have a certain level of skill, it's because I spent a lot of time. I didn't just start teaching at black belt. No, I've been teaching since blue belt. I've been helping out since blue belt, right? So I've always had this, this thing where I was helping, or either running the class or helping with the class. But once I opened my first academy, I was following the same format. But the one thing that changed for me was, of course, always staying up to date with the sport. Always in the, what's going on. Of course, it was harder back then. There was no internet. It only exploded, in the late 2000s. I think it just went crazy. But before that, it was like magazines and VHS tapes, right? So it was harder to stay up to date. Once the internet came in, and boom, it was crazy. And then, of course, that's again why the sport grows, why the sport grew so much. It's a funny thing that I didn't think of that until now. But the internet changed the sport. You can learn, you can pick up techniques and learn things and be involved and be aware of what the main fighters are doing, like no problem, right?
See what the most
So besides being like heavily, in the forefront of what's going on with the sport that I love, the one thing I can say for sure that changed things was my wife. She's a teacher, right? Yeah. She's a teacher, and she lesson plans. Right? She plans her lessons. And I was like, oh, maybe I should do the same. So I started.
Okay, time out 1 second.
Yeah.
Time out 1 second, because this is a very common thing I see with a lot of my peers too. It's like they have to teach a class, and it's just like they just waltz on in. They haven't thought about anything. They just throw a random technique out there, and then you go roll. Like I've seen this happen countless times. So it's like the fact that you just prepare your lessons beforehand, that was a big game changer for me.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me. I kind of when I noticed that clicked for me, and I was like, oh, maybe I should do the same. So I started planning all my lessons. Right. The other thing that changed for me is like, okay, I forget when, but there was this understanding is like, how do coaches, like basketball coaches, football coaches, how do they do their job? Like they don't just like, okay guys, scrimmage. No, they run plays, right? They run plays over and over again. So the drilling aspect of it, right? Okay, guys, you got to drill the playing. You got to drill your game plan, right? Okay, do it again. All right, run the play again. Run the play again. Run the play again. Okay, and then at the end, okay, let's scrimmage, right? because it's also safer. If you have football players scrimmaging all the time, they're going to get hurt. So they just run plays, right? They run the plays. So that kind of made sense for me too. I was like, huh, all right. So I started structuring it more as a professional coach instead of like the old school, okay, let's, warm up 2 techniques and roll. So I think that I'm only scratching the surface, honestly. I think I could do a much better job. But when you are juggling, a whole bunch of other things, it's kind of hard to just focus on the sport. If I could just focus on being a coach, I would try to be more innovative. I'd try to be a little bit more creative. I'd try to, how do I get these crossover concepts going, and be a professional coach. And I have been lucky enough to be a professional coach, but I think there's there's a learning curve here. I think we can get better.
I gotta ask you. You're saying you're implying that you're a little stretched in the coaching aspect. If you can strictly just focus on jiu-jitsu, what's where are you feeling spread thin right now in terms of like this whole department of like coaching, I guess? Because there's also strength, nutrition, conditioning. That's not your domain, strictly jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. No, I think that as an athlete, it's your responsibility to fill in the gaps. Mine is just strictly technical jiu-jitsu, technique, jiu-jitsu technique, strategy for competition if I'm focusing on just coaching athletes. Because honestly, I love teaching beginners. I love doing the novice. I still enjoy teaching self-defense. Like, I still really enjoy that part too. It's almost like I'm on both. I'm like bookends. I love teaching white belts and I love teaching like super high level athletes. Not that I can't teach the middle ground. I can, but just based on the way we have things structured at the academy, that's where I'm at. Like I teach all the novice classes and then I run the competition class. Okay. So I'm kind of like the bookends, right? It's your job as an athlete to fill in the gaps. So you're responsible for your diet, you're responsible for your strength and conditioning, and you are responsible for learning the rules of whatever federation you're playing for. All right, don't come to me after you get disqualified. Oh, I didn't know. Oh man, come on. That's not on me, man. I'm focusing on technique. You should know the rules. You should know the rules.
So I'm assuming this is a common problem for you. You've seen this time and time again, like at tournaments?
Yeah, not always, but, not always, but yeah, there's a few times. I don't see it with my team because I'm always so anal about, guys, know the rules. Know the rules. Don't get this.
Don't make excuses, right?
But
don't give yourself a reason to lose.
Yeah, but I've seen, Michael, I'm at every tournament, yes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so how many matches do you think I've watched?
A lot, like there's hundreds, thousands,
right? Thousands and thousands, right? So I've seen plenty of, especially beginners, go for something, get disqualified, look at the referee going, what did I do? Well, you fool. You got disqualified because you did something wrong. Oh, I didn't know. Well, maybe if you read the rules. Maybe if you read the rules, you would know. Right? Is that completely the white belt's fault? No, it's not. I think there's, as a professor, as a coach, as an academy owner, you should at least say to them, hey, read the rules before you go into the tournament. And if I'm doing my first tournament, did you read the rules? Do you know? Please, at least give them a heads up. Say, don't reap, don't slam. Right? Yeah, just those 2 things, right? No executing, no slamming, no knee reaping. You should be okay, right? At least give them that, so they don't go over there and they reap and they go, what did I do wrong, right? So I've seen some of these things happen, and oh, whose fault is it? I don't know. I mean, both, I guess, the professor and the student. If my guys won't get disqualified.
In defense of the beginner that doesn't read the rule book, though, I'm just saying, I'm throwing it out there. It's a thick pamphlet. I'm just saying. It's I don't want to. It's daunting.
Yeah. Whatever, man. Yeah, go ahead and get disqualified. And then you can expect a conversation with me when the next day, right?
I know exactly what you're
And
saying.
you know what I mean? And that conversation is going to be partially empathetic and partially you're an idiot, you know? So.
Okay. I guess we'll like wrap this up soon.
What up,
Like I guess
Deb? Hope you well.
do you have any thoughts between like how things are now and how things were before? Anything you like, anything you really don't like? Any closing thoughts?
Um, yeah, well, the one thing about, when you have rules, people can always abuse the rules.
Yeah.
You know, as far as mindset, it's way more, let's say, strategic now, and that could be good and it could be bad,
Strategic as opposed to what?
Well, when in our, I think my generation, our generation, it was about the sub. It was about
Mm,
submitting people. There was no focus. Like I'll post some matches online where you'll see, like, if you keep score, I probably lost points wise, but that wasn't the goal, right? There was no. There's a bunch of tournaments back in the day wasn't about points. It was about aggression and who came closest to submitting, right? So it was our focus was to try and tap our opponents always. There was no, oh, let me keep track of how many times I got swept or who swept me or what happened here and there. Like there was,
right.
so when that's not in your mind, the game, you can see a completely different game, you know?
100%. It's true.
So
You see guys do some wacky stuff out there. Yeah.
yeah,
Myself
so
included.
I won plenty of matches on like judges' decisions based on aggression and coming close to submission. But if you go back and watch the match and you scored on the point system, I lost by today's standards. But back then, and the standard was different. I won. Why? Because I almost submitted the guy.
Got you.
You know what I mean? I came closest to tapping him, so I win. I was being more aggressive. I win. You know what I mean? So it was different in that sense. Today is so strategic. Like people are just looking to win by an advantage or just waiting for the right moment to score a sweep and win by 2 points.
Right.
So I don't think the goal is the win, not to tap your opponent out. Right? That's where I feel, there's a big difference. The objective is to win.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's by advantage or 2 points or by submission, it doesn't really matter to the athletes today. The win is the win.
That's the most important
Where
versus
and but in all fairness, I see this kind of changing a little bit because you see the new wave coming in. There's a few guys coming in, this new young generation again, a newer generation
yes.
coming in. They're very aggressive, which I like it. You know, I like that. I think
Just for
it
some reference
might be
material for those
changing
that
a little
can't.
bit where guys are being way more aggressive in trying to get the submission, which is great.
Who have
We
you
have
noticed? Like
this
who
Roberto
particularly?
Gimenez kid. He's going after it, man. He wants that back and he wants to finish you. Like he's not. I don't even think he's thinking about scoring any points. He just wants to tap you out. And there's a lot of newer generation guys that are like that, and that's the game I want to watch. I don't want to watch 10 minutes black belt 10-minute match of 50-50 and they do nothing for 50 minutes, for 10 minutes, and then one guy comes up, gets 2 points and wins.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want to see
It's
that.
not
I
fair.
don't think it's going to grow the sport. I don't think it's fun. It's not viewer friendly. You know what I mean? People are too reserved, too safe. Another thing I find is like, again, it's a love hate. I appreciate the innovation. I appreciate the creativity. I appreciate that the sport is always changing and new things are coming in and out. But there's certain things I don't like as far as like all this lapel stuff
Mm.
is just tying people up, right? So for me, it's like it's past prevention tactics. Yeah, you're not trying to sweep or submit me. You're not trying to finish me. You're not gonna let me pass your guard. So you tie me up.
And got you.
You know what I mean? And then you eat up the clock. And because there's this kind of mentality in jiu-jitsu that comes from the earlier days, and it's kind of stuck with it, where if I can't pass, I lose. So you'll notice if it goes to judges' decisions, they always give it to the guard player, not the guard passer. Right? But here's the thing. But if you tie me up and I can't do anything, I can't pass, shouldn't you be penalized for stalling? Because you're not trying to sweep me. You're not trying to finish me. You're
So
just,
there's a stalemate being created, and it's like he's causing the stalemate. It's the
yeah,
stalemate.
you're
Like you
causing
caused this,
stalemate,
right?
so you should be penalized too. I think there should be definitely a change in the mindset of the referees where, okay, you got to change, you got to forget this whole mentality like, okay, if you can't pass, you lose. The guard player wins. No, you guys, like, it's stalling. Whether it's stalling from the top or stalling from the bottom, it's stalling, and you should be penalized accordingly.
So rather than like if the guard passer can't pass, he loses. It's more about who's causing the actual stalling. If there's a guy on top holding you down, it's the same thing,
Yeah,
right? Like he's stalling. Yeah, yeah. So it's like who's causing the intent for stalling.
yeah. Who's causing the stall? And I find, like, I've seen lots of matches like that where the guard player ties the guy up in a really good guard, but again, he's just stopping the guy from passing. There's no sweep attempts. There's no submission attempts. You know what I mean? It's just, you can't pass. My guard's too good, man. My guard's too good. And I don't even have to try anything. You just can't pass. I win. Because the onus is on the guard passer. I disagree with that. I think the onus should be on both. Don't get me wrong. I love a good guard. If you're a really good guard and you have an unpassable guard, that's amazing. Because that's a real skill. But if I don't see you chasing the submission or chasing the sweeps, then you should be penalized. The objective is, again, to try and try to score, and to try and submit your opponent. Score or submit. If you're not trying to do either, it's stalling. In my mind, you should be penalized for it. Hey, Michael, we're coming here on the 5-minute mark.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Do we get kicked out, or do we only have 1 hour? I didn't really confirm that. Or can we go
You know
on?
what? I don't know. Actually, I'm not sure if it's trying to kick us off either, but
Let's just keep going. And if we get kicked out, thank everyone for tuning in. Whoever popped in here, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'll give you the heads up now. We will be doing this for now Thursday mornings at 10. We started at 10:30 today, but hopefully at 10. And hopefully we'll get, more people on board. This was kind of short notice. We just kind of threw this up. We'll definitely let everybody else know. Hopefully we get some more views. We're just going to keep chatting here, next time we'll try and get, my friend Michael here maybe can keep track of if there's comments on the feed there when guys are talking, and we can address them a little bit better. But we'll get better at this for sure. Thanks, Michael, so much for joining me here and being my co-host. Like, this makes things a lot easier for me and to bounce ideas back and forth. And it's nice to just having someone to kind of bounce back on instead of just me talking about myself. It's kind of gets boring after a while. So I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on board. And look forward to it until the next one. But anything else you'd like to say, Michael?
no, I'm excited. This is fun.